I think as owners, we get very like this. You know what I mean? We're just thinking about the next job, the next project. It's an interesting time to be, in landscaping as far as, what projects are out there to do. And you have to think a little bit outside the box. Technology is changing a lot of stuff. And, we're embracing technology differently here. It's more about the systems and the processes behind the scenes. And
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Landscaper's Guide podcast. Today, I'm excited to have a repeat guest, Scott Callenius from Forever Green Landscape Services. And Scott and I have we've worked together since 2008, and he's been on the podcast. This will be his third time. And so Scott is always growing and changing and doing interesting things. And we had a call the other day. I just called to catch up with you, and I'm like, what, we should talk about this on the podcast. So, Scott, thanks for coming back on the Landscaper's Guide.
Jack, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I always love to have a conversation with you.
So, I will link to the other interviews, but for folks who maybe haven't met you, could you share a little bit about who you are, where your company is, and
Sure.
what are you up to?
Sure. My name is Scott Callenius, and I own Forever Green Landscape Services in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I've been around for about 35 years. Started really, really young. And over the last 3 years, since we've really had our last podcast, the company's grown tremendously. It used to just be me and a couple of people and, me doing everything. And now I have two assistants, thanks to you. And I have a full-time arborist and a full-time landscape designer. I have a sales business developer. I have somebody running all my crews now, and life has really changed, man. I'm looking to like expand. It's not always about the revenue growth and stuff. It's more about, for me, creating a job that I like to go to every day and be around people that I love to work with.
Well, I really like that last part about what you said about creating a job that you really like to be at every day. And I'm curious about the hires. So you mentioned you've hired two assistants, and I remember working with you initially. I think you were under 1 million in revenue, and that was kind of the first goal, was to break 1 million. And we helped design your website. We've done search engine optimization. You've been here in the studio. We've done video in Colorado. We've done a lot of work together. And then sometimes I have an assistant, and I think through working together, you learn that. And we talked about what's that like. And her name's Faith, right?
Correct. Yeah, I did
And
speak to Aaron. If you remember, I ended up talking to Aaron.
yeah. So Erin works with me. She's since been promoted to our operations manager. So she still works with me very heavily as my assistant. And I interviewed her on the podcast, and she's really brilliant. And tell us a little bit about what was that like. So you've hired an assistant, and then it worked well, and you hired another assistant. What what does that mean?
Well, I think as owners, Jack, we think we can do everything, right? And we don't need help, from anybody outside. I don't think we can ever vision what it would be like to have help, right? Because we're always, maybe we don't trust, or maybe we've had a bad experience and we always think, hey, we can do everything ourselves better. Why should I trust somebody else? Or one of the biggest things I learned is you have to teach other people, right? You have to teach
Mhm.
them what exactly you want, what you expect. I mean, you can have all the documentation in the world, but, will they learn to talk like you and act like you? And will they understand landscaping and so on and so forth? And the answer to that question is no. But the reality is, if you find somebody that you can trust and that you can work with, you can teach them all of the skills that they may need to know from landscaping perspective. And I've come to realize it's more about the client journey, right? Like, how does the client feel? How are they communicated with? And I think that that's really helped our company grow exponentially to the point where, we're heavily in communication. And I think too, Jack, one of the things that's changing stuff is AI, right? With that, because now once Gemini, because we're Google, once Gemini learns how to respond, Gemini responds to a lot of our emails. We have to press send or schedule them, but a lot of times it already knows what to say, but with some minor modifications.
I like that. So you hired Faith. Who and what does she do for you? What does she do
So
at
Faith is
present?
my executive assistant. She pretty much she manages my calendar. I'm not allowed to put anything on my calendar without going through her. She reads all my emails before I'm even allowed to send them. She sets up all my appointments. communicates with
Mhm.
my clients, manages my inbox. There's been a lot of help. Jack, I went away to Hawaii this summer for almost 2 weeks, and I talked to her maybe 2 or 3 times while I was there. And we had the company didn't burn down. A lot of things happened during that time. We grew, and everything was running smoothly. And I think if I didn't have faith in position, it would
Mhm.
have been a rough trip, right? You're going to go with your family, you're spending a lot of money, you want to enjoy yourselves, and then you're answering silly emails about, where's the crew, or, dumb stuff that doesn't really need to be answered today, but people in today's world expect answers immediately.
Yeah. Well, so that's amazing, and then who is the second assistant, and what do they do?
Yeah, so Keisha came on board, and Keisha has a background in billing from a medical standpoint. And what we realized during working with Faith is that we were spending a lot of time in work order management. So we had built some really good systems behind the scenes with your help with the website, right? That it goes from our website into Zapier, and from Zapier it goes to Asana. So we built these systems that are nice for our larger accounts. So stuff's being instantaneous, but we also needed somebody to manage that. And Faith's too busy really to manage that. So we put somebody else in a part-time role who can work at her leisure. Her name is Keisha. We love her. And, she has become invaluable to us with work order management. She's also now taken on the role of party planner, which is great. So, like, she works to figure out what we're going to do for a Christmas party this year, right? So, let's take something off my plate. We do quarterly things with our teams, dinners with our managers and stuff. So she handles all of that virtually,
Mhm.
which is great. She's not here in office. And, she can do all the legwork, like, use a Christmas party. It's like we're trying to do a nice Christmas party this year. And it's a challenge, right? 'Cause it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, it's a lot of pricing, it's a lot of things you have to do that I
Mhm.
honestly don't really want to do. So
Well, how many people are gonna be at the Christmas party?
about 60, we have 60 employees in the field, so we're looking for probably having a party of about 100 because I'm pro kids, so I love to
Mhm.
bring the kids to all these things, and, because I think that that adds a lot of value, and I want it to be a place that the families come.
I
I don't
love
want
it.
it to be about us.
Well, that's so cool I love the idea of you having a 100-person Christmas party for Forever Green, and it is a lot of work, and does Keisha enjoy doing the planning of that sort of thing?
Yeah. I'll let you in a secret, Jack. She planned our trip to Hawaii.
Wow.
Only thing I had to do was pay the bill.
That's phenomenal. So I asked that because, you said you really don't like doing it, and so this is something that I needed to learn was that there are people who will enjoy doing things that are just totally draining to you were draining to me. There are people like Aaron is really good at some of those logistical details and yeah, when there's 100 people coming and the contracts and the space and the date, there's so much back and forth and some people really enjoy supporting you, Scott, to help make that party happen for the 100 people. And so I think this is a message that business owners in general need to hear and I applaud you for taking action and doing it and hiring people because it is uncomfortable and you do have to trust people and like let them go do it. And um, it's a really great thing when you find people that work when you enjoy working together in that way, which it sounds like you've found.
Yeah, and I think too, Jack, as owners, we have to get away from the financial part of it and start to realize that people have lives and other things that they want to do in their life and you need to work around their schedule.
Uh huh.
These girls will work late into the night, and I see all the emails in the morning that they have scheduled. And it's not uncommon for Keisha to be on our system at 2 o'clock in the morning. If that's when she chooses to get on and do work orders and do
Uh
the
huh.
things like that and schedule emails and stuff, what does it bother me? It doesn't cost me any more. It doesn't cost me any less. And if that's the time that she feels the best that she wants to perform, then I feel like, let her do her thing, right? And we have a team meeting every day at 3:30. She's on there. She gets on, she answers asks questions, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But Chuck, I want to back up for a second. I think the biggest thing is that it's not just jobs that you don't like to do. Maybe it's jobs that you shouldn't be doing as the owner because have to be the cheerleader of your company. You have to be the face that's forward. You
Hmm.
need to be available to meet with your team to deal with whatever's going on. I mean, I offloaded accounting last year too, and now I have a a part-time CFO, right? And now my accounting team, I'm amazing at accounting. I could run all my QuickBooks, pay all my
Uh-huh.
bills, run reports, do all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, is it really worth it for me to spend all my day paying bills and stuff like that when I could be out growing the company or meeting with a new client or looking at another thing or handling a situation at work or buying another truck or talking about financing or whatever that looks like? I think my time is better served someplace else.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think, the Hawaii thing was just one thing that you did for a couple weeks. I don't think you're not going to Hawaii every day. So I think that having this support has helped you have some of that free time personally, but also, yeah, tell me more about some of those other things that how has it helped you then focus on growing other parts of the business?
Yeah, I mean, look, the biggest thing for me was to kind of step back a little bit and realize that I was working too many hours and the hours that I was working wasn't really efficient. So
Uh-huh.
now I'm kind of moved to like a three and I work Monday till Thursday till lunch, and then I'm gone and I go to my other house for the weekend. But what I've noticed is by taking off a half a day on Thursday, all day Friday, Saturday, I come back Sunday and I actually go in my office on Sunday and I really enjoy it because I feel like no one's bothering me. I can work, I can do what I need to do, and then I hit the ground running. So I'm finding that I'm having more success whittling my schedule down into a shorter window and not being available for everybody at all times.
Mhm.
And it forces them to like squeeze me into their schedule because now I'm as important as them. And I think that as owners we get pulled in different directions. Well, I can't meet Mrs. Smith because Mrs. Smith works and she can only meet me at Saturday at 6 o'clock at night. Well, how is that fair to me? I have a family and I have kids. I mean, yes, they're grown up and you know that, but that doesn't mean that when they were younger that it wasn't more important for me to go to their basketball games or coach their games. And I think as owners, we have to start realizing, and this is where our faith comes in, right? This is where an Aaron comes in, that they can time block your schedule. They can give the clients many of times that you can meet, right? But they don't have to be, a convenient time for you. And I think that works out better because then you're lifting your level of professionalism as well.
Yeah, I agree. It is, and also one of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to unpack a little bit was the work order form that we built together, because I just remember we were together and you were telling me about how you're getting calls, emails, voicemails, texts with like little bits of information because um, Forever Green focuses on c HOA communities. So you might how I mean, you probably have what, 1,000 homeowners that
More,
who's thousands? Is it
yes,
thousands now?
couple thousand houses at this point now.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just remember on the path there, like, you were getting hundreds of messages, and they would be like, "Hey, I need help with, I don't know, a tree branch fell on my driveway," and then you'd have to figure out, well, okay, which HOA community is this?
Yeah.
Who's the point of contact at the community? What's their thing? And now, and we had a similar experience with Ramblin' Jackson with our own clients, where we have hundreds of clients, hundreds of websites, and there's little edits, and those are really important that we do them well. All those little small things have to be done well. And so we ended up building a form that we fill out that, what client is this? That alone helps standardize. We basically created a ticketing system, and we built that for Forever Green, and we worked with you. You also have another integration person that we worked with, and that system now, we direct people to fill out. It's a work order form. It's on your website. It's really easy to find. It's on the top of it. And that system then, once it became too much for you to manage, then Faith did it. And then once it was too much for Faith, now Keisha can do it. So I think you built, like, not only did you hire some assistants, but you also have built things that support them and allow them to support you. Because I think sometimes people just hire a person. All right, I've got a person, and they have no process in place. And then when that person leaves, there goes all the support. Whereas I think you've built some systems that we have you've got great people managing for you, and that allows both of you some scalability and some flexibility.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, Jack. I think we'd back up first, right? So if you think back in time, right? So in 2008, we built this website. I don't remember what year we did Elevate, but when I met with Robert, we redid the website. Then again, we did some tweaks, nothing crazy, but we did some tweaks. And I think with the help of your team, um, we've been able to like really get down granular. Like, I think we need to back up to the contact form, right? So like my contact form is pretty tough to get through, but it gets me the leads that I need. Right. So I'm number one in a lot of the categories and that I need to be, thankfully, to Ramla Jackson, your team, SEO, the writing, so on and so forth. And we've made adjustments along the way, by scrubbing the website and doing certain things with a lot of your account reps that have helped me throughout the years. But what we've learned is that, you can be more precise of what you're asking for, right? And now it's become a sales tool, right? So like the work order form, the communities that are self-managed or don't have any kind of work order process, they go crazy when I show up. I think I told you this, that this year, earlier this year, we signed a, four or $500,000 maintenance account. And one of the number one things was that I could offer them a work order program. Okay. And you know what that work order form cost me? Nothing, because you built it already. So
Right.
all it was, okay, when community X comes in and they put their name with their, you know what I mean, the name of the community, their information, that instantly goes into that form. And from there, yes, there's some wizardry behind the scenes. And then it goes right to an Asana task board.
Mhm.
And then inside of that task board, all that has to be adjusted is just to verify that the information is correct, and then click it to what crew is going to handle it.
Mhm.
So it's very simple management. We lost the guy that you mentioned. His name was Mark. We loved him. Mark had since left our company and went on to greener pastures, and we're happy for Mark. And he's helped us build a lot of stuff. But that system that was built was easy for Keisha to manage. She came in, it took her maybe a couple weeks, right? Of some back and forth and how do I manage it? Now she might manage it better than Mark because that's her basically her full-time job. Right. Like she works at that every day to make sure this is done. And then the follow-up, Jack, is even better, is that when you can send out a mass email to the property managers, to other people, and say, okay, this was done, this was done, this was done. So you're closing the loop. And now we're learning that we can also add other people. Like, let's say you have an admin that works at said community, we can add the admin, and then she or he can readily see all the notes that you are getting, from the field. Hey, we looked at this. This is homeowner responsibility, broken sprinkler head. It's taken care of. The guys trimmed the bushes,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like, right? And then you can see the notes that are in there, and then it becomes seamless. Now it's not even a matter of us sending a follow up. They can go right in there and look it for themselves and say, "Oh, well, look, they've already went to this house. This can't be addressed for this reason, or proposals being sent." And then we make notes in that, and we have another little board that says pending proposals. So we've kind of built the system out. But if you think about it, Jack, it started from a simple idea of you and I having a contact form, having other things on our site, go to a gravity form, and then from there it sent other places. And I think that we're lost in a world of AI and agents and all this other stuff, and we want AI to do everything. And I think you and I have been building AI before it was popular, because that's what this is. It's a system that takes out the manual stuff. We still need people to review it. We still need people to look at it,
Mhm.
but we don't have to do the physical manual entering.
Well, I really see forms, contact forms as like the path to so much automation. And yeah, AI, I don't even think we were talking about AI 3 years ago. One little note, you said we built your website in 2008. It was 2018.
18. Okay.
Just so,
Yeah.
we haven't known each other that long. But yeah, 2018, yeah, I mean, wow, so much has changed in business, but now, yeah, now you can build AI into that and it could draft the email for you. But what you've done is you've created milestones, kind of like we did with your sales process of like, all right, I got to get a lead, I got to qualify them, I got to go visit them, and you literally have like boards in Asana where you're dragging things and you can then assign them. And I think that's wonderful because also when Keisha needs a break, right? If Keisha needs to go to Hawaii, maybe, right? Or whatever, you have this system and you have access to all the data. I can't tell you, Scott, that how many people I've met with that everything is still literally sticky notes or I met with an office that was they were faxing. So they were handwriting, like, notes. No, I'm not BSing you. They were handwriting it and then faxing it so it would go to an email to their salesperson. I'm like, "And how long would that take?" They're like, "Oh, usually we get it to them within a couple days of somebody calling the office." And I'm like, "What if we built a form that sent all this stuff to this person instantly?" And they're like, "No way." Yeah, so the form I think has I love that we've taken it out. So yes, one, sales, lead generation forms, but operations, any repeatable step should have a form. We're always thinking at Ramblin' Jackson because we have so much data to keep track of for people, and we're like, whenever we can, we build a form internally to keep track of it and automate things.
Yeah, and I would also say too, Jack, that with that, it's helped in other areas, right? Not just sales, not just all of it. It's become, where now they get a response, and because of your team, now not only is it just say we got your work order, there's a video of this guy
Mhm.
on the return that says, "Hey, this is Scott with Forever Green. We're gonna get back to you with your work order," and stuff like that, and it's just an embedded little video that Jason set up. So it's like, you think about some of this stuff where you're starting to get, return, and now people know who I am. Even if I'm not the person that's gonna come out there, they're gonna get a response, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think these things are little tweaks that help, but you need somebody to help you do that, and it can't just be, I think as owners, we get very like this, you know what I mean? We're just thinking about the next job, the next project, and I'm thinking about what 27 is going to look like and what 28 is going to look like, not what I'm doing in 26.
Where are you headed? What are you excited about in the future?
Well, I'm just super excited now about moving the company more into enhancement work, higher level enhancement work, much bigger landscape projects than we had done in the past. I think we focused mostly on HOA and HOA management. And with private equity and a lot of companies being bought up, I think that changes the market a little bit. And you know, private equity companies, they're looking for these companies that, are doing 90 to 100% maintenance. So if you're selling to them, they're not looking for any of the landscape projects, right? So, and owners that are positioning themselves to sell to them are being, told that this is what you need to do. So I think that they're turning down this other work, right? They're turning down the tree care. They're turning down the enhancement work. They're turning down the larger scale landscape projects. And what I'm seeing in my market is that there's a lot of draw for that, because now the pool of people that want to do the work and are qualified to do the work are a lot less. Where
Mm,
before it was like everybody wants a landscape job, nobody wants to cut grass. But now with private equity being involved in selling and trading businesses like cards, like baseball cards, it's like, you get in the room with the consultants, and listen, I've talked to all the top 10 guys, and they all want maintenance, maintenance, maintenance because they want that reoccurring revenue model. The
mhm.
problem is that it's low margin work. This is no shock, particularly in my market. So I think if you could go to your clients, upsell them work, or maybe take on new clients that need tremendous amount of redos, that then you can sell the maintenance at a higher number, because they've invested these, in our case, hundreds of thousands of dollars in landscaping.
Mhm.
Now you need to pay a percentage of that to maintain it, instead of them looking at it like, well, I just need my grass mowed and bushes trimmed, give me the lowest price. Right.
Mhm.
So we're doing a lot of beach restoration work right now, a lot of all of our buildings in South Florida are going through these 4 years inspections, and a lot of them are failing, so they're doing concrete restoration projects and things like that. So those big buildings with scaffolding going up and down, and with all of that is becoming this new opportunity for us to do like the waterproofing, removing all the debris and stuff like that out of the beds, and then they can get in there and do their projects, and then after that it's a new landscape. So it's an interesting time to be, in landscaping, as far as what projects are out there to do, and you have to think a little bit outside the box as
Mm.
far as, what can you sell to. And I think too, we're also dealing with new homeowners. We don't do residential work, but I think I would touch on that a little bit. I think we're going to move more into quiet work and autonomous work. And I think that more, if I was really young and I was starting on into a landscape company, I would look at not just the battery operated equipment, Jack, but I would look at ways to not mow anymore. And I would look at ways to have like, those guys with the little robo lawnmowers that mowed the small lots. And I would start to position myself as a leader in my market to do that. That's not very big down here yet, but I know it's coming. If you go to the Midwest, it's pretty popular. A lot of people had those little lawnmowers, whatever they're called. When I was at GIE, there was a lot of companies that offer
Mhm.
that. I think that you can get a different employee, right? Because now you can kind of get someone who's tech savvy that wants to do that. You might be a challenge with labor, so you can just use labor to go trim and edge and do things that so it's not the mowing part. And I think that technology is changing a lot of stuff. And we're embracing technology differently here. It's more about the systems and the processes behind the scenes, and you know we run in GPSs in trucks and tracking and stuff like that so we can be more efficient and be more on the job and looking at investments and equipment that'll make your jobs faster. But I think each company has to take a step back and look at what they're doing and see if they can do it faster and better,
Mhm.
because the reality is landscaping is getting commoditized. When Amazon and big companies want to get involved, they're disruptors for a reason, Jack. They're not. The old guard is falling, and I'm 55 years old and I know I have to change. You're going to be 40 here. You get your birthday. Is your birthday's shortly?
It's, yeah, it's a couple days from now.
Yeah, and it's like, everything's changed in your life. If you think back 10 years ago, what you were doing with rambling to what you're doing today, it's completely different.
Yeah, it is completely different, and, yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, what would it be like to start a business 10, like, I don't know. It would be interesting to start a business now versus having started before, and it's interesting working with really younger people who they had AI while they were in college, when they were that young, whereas I didn't. And, like, I remember, like, it was a requirement to use email. And, that was I was the first year in college where that was a requirement. It was like, this is the official communication of the college.
Yeah.
And that seems like so common now. It is. Like, how else would they communicate with you? So,
Yeah.
um
But don't you think all of it, Jack, has changed? I mean, so you have a lot of solopreneurs. Like if you look at landscaping, you open up Instagram today, you have a lot of solopreneurs. So are they really business owners or are they Instagram influencers who own a small landscape company? I'm not sure to judge either way, but I saw a
Mhm.
lot of them walking around GIE, and it's like, I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it's different. I think that it's fine when you're young, but as you age and as you mature, you're going to need other people to do the task within your company, because eventually your body is going to wear down. You cannot mow yards your entire life and stay healthy. And it's just the facts of life. So, at some point, you can maybe make good money and move your career along, but at some point you have to hire people to do these jobs.
Mhm.
So I'm in somewhere in between those. Like I see a lot of these mostly men who want to tell us what to do and how to grow a business and all this stuff. And I look at that and say, well, have you really been through the trials and tribulations? I mean, hire 5 people and have 4 of them leave and see if you can get the same amount of work done. It's a challenge, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's the next step in this industry is like, the guys that are tried and true and the people that have done things and the ones that are up and coming, that do use social media to grow their businesses, I think they can do really well. But they have to not just be an influencer part of it. They got to actually grow a real company behind the scenes.
Well, so we were talking about this on our call,
Yeah.
and the one book that comes to mind that changed my life and my whole approach to everything really was The E-Myth Revisited.
Great book.
And that book, in a nutshell, if you haven't listened to it or read it, you have to. And there's also the E-Myth Landscape Contractor with, Tony Bass, which is excellent. But they're both those are both great books. But it's about, there's the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And when I read that book, I was very much a technician and maybe a reluctant manager, because I had never, when I started my own company, I hadn't really had many jobs. Like, I worked at a dairy farm for less than a year, and I had other jobs that were just jobs that were part-time or shorter than a year. And I think what you're talking about though is like the choice to become a manager and then to become an entrepreneur, maybe that hires managers, is what you're talking about, of building a business that's built on systems,
Yeah.
this whole work order system.
Right.
Like that's how like that book changed how I think of things, is like, all right, well, how can this kind of chaotic experience for Scott become a little system that creates freedom for him? And that's how I think about really everything in business, is kind of through that lens. I know that many people do not enjoy thinking that way. And I've worked with some of them, and I've had pretty serious business relationships with people who they realize, I don't want to become the manager. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't like the stress of having 5 employees and 4 of them leaving and having to figure out payroll tax and all this business stuff. And they're also pretty happy though being a technician, you know, but
Yeah, there's
also
nothing wrong with that.
but they're also, to your point, they're not in a physically demanding trade like landscaping or lawn mowing
Right.
as they approach 60, right? So I think that's yeah, it's just wise, I guess, for you to say it. And what from my experience, and that's the reason why most people aren't long-term entrepreneurs. Like you have to be kind of crazy to do it in a way. You have to enjoy the risk of it. You have to be like, "Ooh, these 4 people might quit, and I'm gonna be damned if they do, and I'm gonna be stronger and make money out of it somehow."
Right.
Like you
Right. I
have
think, Jack, that's a big thing, right? I think that's a huge thing is that most people that start in business are risk averse.
Yes.
They're not really ready for the risk. When you tell somebody like, 2 weeks ago, we had 3 trucks just delivered here and, 1 or 2 are in the field and the other ones are gonna come out later on. And, to make a 150 or whatever $1,000 investment it is in that, you know, you have to be prepared for that, right? And you have to be able to go, okay, well, I can sleep at night and I know that I have growth and I have a plan and these things are in place and you're not everybody's built for that. You
Well
know,
well, I mean, so how much of that is just innate? Like, how much of that was, like, Scott and Jack were just born or had certain life experience? And I don't expect you to know the answer to this. I'm more just curious of, like, how do some people have it and some people don't? Like, my parents, for instance, they're like, "We would have never done what you do. We can't imagine having the stress of all the employees and the overhead and all this stuff." And I'm also like, "But if you didn't do what you did, I probably wouldn't have been this way." So it was part of just the experience of where I'm at in my family in some ways that
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think when I look at my own mother, same thing. My mom's risk averse. She thinks that you should work for a job for 30 or 40 years and get the
Mhm.
pension and go home and retire and you know what I mean? And then you look back and you're 80 years old and it's like, okay, well, I had a career for 40 years and what do I have after that? I have some money, I have some security. But I don't think you and I are wired that way, Jack. I think you and I look at it more like it's so much fun to see our team win. It's so much fun to see Ramblin' Jackson expand. It's so much fun for you to take off time and go be able to go to the mountains and hang out with your kids, right? And realize that the bills are paid, things are happening, and the business is growing, but yeah, you're out elk hunting. Right. So for me, I feel like it's the same thing. I get more excitement watching my team win or handing them a new set of keys to a brand new truck or new trailer or taking them out to dinner and seeing them and their kids and their families. And one of my leaders got married 2 weeks ago, and I was there for that. And I mean, and those types of things are irreplaceable, in my opinion,
right.
with, like leadership and as owners of a company.
I agree. Those really are the more motivating and rewarding things. And yes, I do like making more money.
Sure.
Yes, of course I do. But it wouldn't be the only thing that would be enough to wanna do what I do. So, yeah, I enjoy seeing other people. I've been fortunate, I have some people who've worked with me for 9 years, and to have that type of work relationship with them, see what they're doing, they help me, I'm helping them. I've seen people get married or have kids or buy their first house or,
Yeah.
all sorts of, really major life events that I also got to experience as a result, or that my business contributed to.
Yeah.
It is rewarding. So I'm just curious. So for back to the you're talking about the kind of the launchpreneur, the solo owner operator lawn company that's also making social content. I'm like right on. Every time I see these people, I'm like, in some ways, I'm like, where else in the world could you do this? Like where else where else in the world could you start a lawn care company from nothing and grow it to a $200,000 enterprise, or in some cases a multi-million dollar thing.
I mean, look, I like it too, Jack. I do. I think my advice to them would be to make sure that you have a longer term plan and that you are actually adding more to society and you're not just telling people what they want to hear for clicks. That's what's a little concerning for me is that I go on and I see some of the comments and some of the people that are saying certain things.
Uh-huh.
As somebody who's grown a business for almost 40 years, I've started doing this when I was like 15 years old,
Yeah.
younger, that there are a lot of pitfalls to things. And I don't necessarily always agree with their comments. Like, I'm not against buying used equipment. I'm not against having a used truck. I'm not against starting. I mean, if you see my first truck and the first thing that I've ever did, it wasn't perfect. It
Mhm.
wasn't about being perfect. But I do think at some point you have to start making sure that the information that you are giving out is truthful and that it's not just for more clicks, because to say to somebody, hey, you can go get a lawnmower and get a truck and do this and make a couple $1,000s a week. Well, maybe you can at a short, you know what I mean, in a short duration, but
Mhm.
eventually you start to outgrowing your facilities, your trucks wear out, your equipment wears out. Are you building a nest egg to replace that? Or are
Mm.
you to take financing? There's a lot of things as a business owner, Jack, that we have to deal with: taxes, employees, healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of things to think. So I understand the idea of staying small. Sometimes I think to myself, I mean, maybe I should just go back to 25 guys. I'd probably make more money. But the reality is that, to see my young ladies and the girls and the guys that work for me to go from, entry level, employee to now running a crew and to see them celebrating birthdays and to celebrate all that stuff, I wouldn't replace that for money. But I also want to talk to you about that too, is a lot of people are ashamed to tell people what they make. You know what I mean? And that they think that they can't tell their team, hey, I make six-figure income, or I make a quarter of a million a year, or whatever that is.
Uh,
If you're not open with them and tell them why wouldn't they want to celebrate you? As long as you're giving them all the tools and all the things that they need and you're giving
yeah.
them raises and you're doing all the stuff along the way, why wouldn't they celebrate those wins with you? Right? Like, instead of us always hiding everything and
Mhm.
thinking, I can't tell Sally how much my paycheck is and how much this is and that is, I think that that's wrong. I mean, as a matter of fact, we're going to be starting quarterly meetings with the entire team, with a management team, where we're going to open up all the books and we're going to show everybody. My accountant team's going to run it, and they're going to explain to everybody, this is the money that comes in. These are the bills. This is the responsibility. All the things. Yes, it's going to be higher level. It's not going to be granular down to every penny. But I
Mhm.
think people need to know, when do you make money in a landscape business? When do you not make money? When do you have cash burn? When do you need to make investments? I think we have to be more
Yeah.
open, transparent.
I've been open book management the whole time,
Yeah.
and what I've found is that, um well, and no, I wasn't in the beginning, and then I had a lot of debt, I had a lot of problems that I kept secret, and then once I let people know, they're like, "Oh, well, thanks for telling me that all these clients owe us money." Like, I had an accounts receivable problem, and it was once I let people know, they're like, "Oh, well, we should stop working for them.
Yeah.
We they need to pay us." And I'm like, "Yeah, they do." And then it was so much that I couldn't contact everyone. So then I actually I have a what I call the entrepreneurial pay plan. So I'm open book about our net profit, and when it's above a certain amount, I have a bonus pool that gets paid out, and it's based on if you've been here for over a year, then you get access to this bonus pool. And when it's above a certain percentage amount, the percentage gets even higher. And so then people are like, "Wow, that ended up being a lot." Or there have also been quarters, Scott, where it hasn't been paid, and I've been able, just because I'm open book about when it's good, when I'm open book about, "Hey, here's why we didn't make it this time." People, I found the right people feel trusted, they feel valued with it. Some people feel resentful about it. They say, "Well, I thought we were all gonna get this bonus." And it's like, "Well, the company, as a result of these things, didn't make it." Or and so some people have responded toxic in a toxic way, Scott. Some people that are not a fit, that
Yeah.
I'm glad are gone, people that I sleep a lot better now that they're not here. But then the people who have been here for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years are like, "Oh, well, how are we gonna fix that? I have an idea," or "I didn't realize we were paying for this software anymore. We could eliminate that." So I'm with you on it, and I think, um, there's a lot of education that goes along with it, though. Like, I mean, I had, somebody who was really resentful with me, didn't understand at a basic level the difference between gross profit and net profit, and our bonus is based on net profit. And they were really upset about that, and they just didn't get it, and they invented this whole narrative and started telling people I was taking advantage of them. And luckily the other people knew enough to be like, "Dude, you don't actually know what you're talking about. Here's how net profit works, because we've been here for years and we've heard this every quarter," kind of thing. So kind of a rant there, but I'm
No,
with
I
you
love
on
that,
it.
Jack, and that's one of the things, and I'll probably talk to you offline as we work through that, because that's some of the challenges we're running into now. So we're baby stepping into that.
uh
So that way, I want to get everybody on board. This was a year that we had more employees, so now we have to be ACA compliant. So we've had to offer health care, and that's been a challenge onboarding that. And we're going to
uh-huh.
even expand on that going into next year. And, there's a cost associated with that. And, we're taking into all the things you just said, like some of our people need to be compensated on gross profit, is because some of them don't have any control over the overhead of the company, right? So those are areas where your company, you do, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you don't.
Well, and I do have a bonus, a different one that is based on gross profit.
Yes.
So
Okay,
I
great.
I have both, but the distinction between I guess, so it's like part of it's being patient and teaching people, and um and then some people just aren't team players is really what it comes down to.
And I'm fine with that, Jack. Personally, I'd
Yeah.
rather the team players off the boat or off the ship. The non-team players, I'd rather have them off the ship as fast as possible. And if that's the case, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
You're not fit for here. I have no problem, letting you
Yeah.
go.
Because
And
yeah,
it's,
I think it's important. Yeah, I mean, because somebody may not have uh, uh, an impact on how many trucks did the company buy, or
right,
what was this other, how much does Keisha cost? I don't know,
right.
but they could control how much time the crew is spending on a certain job, and they should be compensated for that. I'm with you on that. I think there's lots of different layers to it, and I think that's a kind of a moving target in some ways, of like knowing which parts of your business, what behaviors do you want to incentivize, and what are your targets, and then how do they change now that you're at over 50 employees. Like for
Yeah.
me, I have clients in 28 states, and we have to do tax returns in some of them, and it varies by state of how
Yes.
much revenue are you doing, and it's like extremely complicated. And then even figuring it out, I have to hire somebody, and that costs money. And so I don't know, like you keep getting to the next level, and then it's like, wow, here's this whole additional level of financial work that needs to be done, and
Yeah.
even doing the work to figure out the tax has a big expense.
Yes. Yeah, and we're even looking at corporate structure now. Like I never thought in a million years I'd be sitting here talking about corporate structure and what are you, an S corp, a this corp, a that corp, so now the conversations are, well, if you're going to make these investments, then maybe you need to
Mhm.
switch to some other, corporate structure because tax laws change and so on and so forth. And these are all, you know, higher level things to discuss. And it's great to be able to have the opportunity to talk to somebody as a professional that's leading your company to put you in the right spot. But,
Well,
to your point,
mhm.
it's a decision.
Well, it is, and then I think that in order to have the bandwidth to even, like, show up to that meeting and then comprehend what these people just talked about, you have to have space in your calendar to do that. And that's
Yeah.
that's just one of the things that I realized as I grew was like, "Oh, wow, like, we're doing a lot of revenue, there's a lot of expenses, there's all this different multi-state complexity, and if I didn't have the support of the systems and the people, I couldn't do it." But I like it. So I don't know about you, but I find that, like, I kind of enjoy, like, part of me is like, "Oh, damn, I have to pay this tax." And then part of me is like, it's like a fun puzzle that I'm figuring out, and then we have different, like, wizards that we hire who are like, I don't know, like, we hired a new CPA and, like, wow, this dude's level of wizardry, like, I don't wanna read about all these changes in the way that he does. I wanna hire him so he can tell me what to do.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, Jack, because like, I have meetings, obviously, a lot of stand-in meetings every week, and, one of my favorite meetings is meeting with my accounting team every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Because it's like, we're gonna talk about the payroll and this and that and the bills and the stuff, and then here's the thing, the greatest part of the meeting is I don't have to do anything. I mean, I used to just be me. Now I get on there and I got a team of 3 or 4, and they're telling us, okay, this is where we're at. This is what's coming in. This is what we need to do. And there's another reason for Keisha, by the way. Keisha is also our collector. So when we had accounts receivable issues too, we put her on that. And what I think, just to back up real quick, one of the things that's nice about having somebody else do collections for you is you take the personal part of it out. Because now they're doing collections for Ramblin' or for Forever Green, as opposed to Jack calling up and being like, "Hey, hey Scott, you didn't pay your bill," right? Like,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
something, like we've had hiccups before, like we've changed credit cards with you guys, and we get an email from you, and it's like, "Hey, your charge didn't go through. Oh, whoops, sorry. We're not using that card anymore or whatever, so we need to change it or however. The things happen."
Yeah. Well, and I think, back to you're talking about the people who are starting out and they're kind of, I think there's a fear of getting to the level maybe that you're at, that I don't know how to do all of this advanced financial stuff,
Right.
or I don't know how to do all this healthcare stuff. And I think it partly comes down to scaling at all. You're going to have to hire and trust other people. It doesn't mean that you're like unaware of what's going on or that you're not going to need to learn new things, but I think part of it comes down to, can you hire people?
Yeah.
Can you hire and trust people? And 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 I just, some people can't. And I guess is what I was saying, is that some people they can't or they won't, and there's plenty of market for that. Some of the projects that we're turning down through your website or that
Thank
you're
you.
politely declining, somebody else would gladly do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just fear. It's fear, Jack. You know what I
It
mean?
is.
They have fear, and because I get invited to a lot of groups. A lot of group
Mhm.
settings, particularly on Facebook and places like that, and they want to get your input and stuff. And I go on many of them and I get involved, and then usually I end up leaving those groups pretty quickly, because I find that there's just so much fear in there of a sense of like, well, I can't hire a full-time guy because I might only need him 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and what do I do with them on the extra day? And
Mhm.
and I get bogged down in that in a sense, like, 'cause I just don't think like that. I think to myself, "Well, if I had a guy and I only had 3 days of work with him, the other 2 days, I'd have him butterflying in flyers, I'd have him fixing equipment, I would do something else with that time that would get a better ROI as opposed to like, well, I just gonna send him home and not pay him." So I think that's where the challenge becomes, is that they don't have enough work. And I'd also say too, another thing on this solopreneur thing is a lot of people have other jobs, Jack, and I don't think I think your plan A and your plan B and your plan C was what you're doing right now. I don't think there was, you know, Jack didn't work someplace else and then you weren't working at the dairy farm saying that could be a career. And then but on the side, I'm doing website development. I think you were all in on website development, and that's where you were going to be.
It is. That's true. I went all in, and I'm glad that I did. I didn't really have much to lose. I had a lot of debt. So it was kinda like, like, I don't know, it was easier to start that way in some ways, than to say, "Oh, I'm gonna go." But also, I don't know, sometimes people have a job and then they start a business with that much head start, so I don't wanna knock that either.
But
Um,
you know what? Some of your greatest years for that was in that shed in the behind your house where you started everything.
that's right.
because you created a lot of content, and you created a lot of things, and you helped a lot of people in those days. And think about what you've done now. Don't forget those.
Well, yeah, no, and before that, before the shed, I started in an attic. I had a laptop, and I actually, it's amazing. I remember I bought a desk at Goodwill for $25, and the desk had a, like, Goodwill $25 price tag on it that I couldn't get off. So
Uh-huh.
it was, like, just there. But it was like, "Alright, I've got a laptop and a $25 desk in a," and it wasn't even a full attic. It was like it was like, I don't know, this, like, lofted part of this house that I was renting, and, I worked out of, like, coffee shops, and then I was like, "Oh, I gotta get an office." So I started
Yeah.
renting an office, and it's been quite a journey to.
And now you have an amazing studio in
I do.
Lawrence.
I do, and I never, well, part of I dreamed about owning commercial real estate. Was part of what I knew I wanted. I back in even the milk truck, I remember listening to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, "All right, I need to save up and buy," and I at this time, I thought, "I'm gonna have a commercial property. Everyone at Ramblin' Jackson's gonna work there. It's gonna be a barn. We're gonna renovate it." I like, this is really what I thought I wanted.
Yeah, yeah,
And, I don't know. I'm really glad that I didn't end up with that. Commercial real estate's really struggling right now, and I did buy a commercial property in a sense that I work out of, but it's like a house. So,
yeah. But,
um
Jack, I think that's a good point though, too, if you think about some of that stuff, right? Like, I've taken a lot of advice from you over the years where I have a virtual office. It's unheard of in landscaping to have multiple people working for you that work from their own confines, basically their own home. And
mhm.
I think it makes it even better because people are allowed to, if they don't want to travel, if they don't want, it's like it opens up more opportunities. And I learned a lot of that from you because dealing with your account reps and other people, as going through the process of building our sites and stuff that you have a great team, but they're not all centrally located in one spot. You know what I mean? And it's great that you get different perspectives too from where they may live and what's going on in their environment. And I think that that really adds to the overall business as opposed to just having everybody working in the same single spot all the time.
I see it as a growing trend. I
Yeah.
have a client in Michigan whose full-time salesperson works entirely remote from Florida. Now, in this case, this person worked there for, like, 5 years, and so they have 5 years of relationship and trust and, like, results. This lady can sell, but she does it remotely and even outsells the in-person people, believe it or not. And part of it is because, and I agree with you that you need to have boundaries and you shouldn't be saying, "Well, I'm gonna meet with you at 6 p.m. because that's when you're available." And
Right.
at her phase of life, she's like, "Yeah, I can do that." So she does meet with people on Zoom, sometimes at 6 p.m., and it works.
Right.
And it's, but at this season of life, that makes sense for her. And,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think the whole remote work thing is fascinating. I even have a client who has 2 virtual assistants in the Philippines, and one of them does all of his bookkeeping.
Yeah. For
And,
sure.
for sure, you can get a lot done. I don't know. It's easier to me running a fully remote company than when I had a part in-person company and a half of my team was remote company.
Yeah. I think, Jack, you deal with a lot less drama that way. You might have some you don't have a lot of like inner office arguments and fighting because people aren't seeing each other on the daily basis. They've got space between them and
Well, maybe, but I also think that sometimes being in person would have an advantage to that. Like, maybe we need to go out for lunch.
right.
Maybe we need to, like, go mini golfing or do something dumb together,
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
so I think that maybe there's more of that drama, but in some ways you have to deal with it in a different way remotely, and I don't know. I like it. I think there's pros and cons to both, but I'm just commenting that I see a lot of smart landscape company owners like you that have virtual assistants or remote team members, and they've scaled by doing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because people don't ask to see faith. But here's the funny thing is, like, we've been doing a lot of these shows, like condo shows and stuff, and they all come. They all come from wherever they are. Like, Keisha lives on the West Coast, so she comes in and it's great. Like, we all get together, we go to dinner, we do those kinds of things, and if it's, like, on a quarterly basis, I think it means a lot. You take everybody out to dinner, you get everybody together, and I think that builds the team too, because they are seeing them. I know you do that by bringing everybody out to Colorado at certain times of the year and, everybody getting together, or maybe you meet someplace else now because the team's kinda spread out, so
Yeah.
they're, like, traveling as opposed to them coming to see you.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely, and that I love those times.
yeah.
Well, Scott, we could talk all day, but we've got to wrap up. So for folks listening who may want to like check out your website or connect with you on social media or email, I know you like networking with people. How
Yeah.
can people
Hit
get
me
in
up
touch?
anywhere. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, and check out forevergreenlandscaper.com and see what Jack and his team built for us. And listen, if you ever have any questions about websites and building and what Jack's done for me, please reach out. I'm happy to support you, Jack, in any way I can.
I really appreciate that, Scott. Um, and always a pleasure to talk with you, and keep doing great stuff, man. It's a awesome experience working with you and seeing you continue to grow.
Thanks, Jack. We got to get together next time you come south or I go west. We got to catch up in
L-
first face to face.
let's do that.
All right.
All right, Scott. Take care, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye. Hey, it's Jack, and if you enjoyed today's episode of the Landscaper's Guide podcast, make sure you check out Scott's website, forevergreenlandscaper.com, to see some of the work that me and my team at Ramblin' Jackson did for Scott. And if you're curious about where to get started with your landscape company sales and marketing, or if you want to learn more about integration, some of the things that we talked about with Scott, like work orders and integrating with different softwares, we'd love to have a 15-minute marketing brainstorm call with you. On this call, we're going to talk about who is your Hell Yes customer? What are you doing for marketing to generate leads? And ultimately, how is it supporting your sales? We'll give you ideas, and if it makes sense, we can have a longer conversation after that about potentially working together. So book your 15-minute marketing brainstorm call at landscapersguide.com/brainstorm. See our show notes for the links I mentioned, including that one. And my name's Jack Jostes. Thanks for checking out today's podcast, and I look forward to talking with you next week on the Landscaper's Guide.